Hello, everyone. I'm Shruti Tewari, a filmmaker from Bay Area, California. And I'm very grateful to Gandhara Independent Film Festival for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this celebration of International Women's Day, as well as for asking me to share a bit about my journey as a filmmaker. And I'm humbled to be doing so after only two short films that are made, several more in the pipeline. I uh, I have always been drawn to the arts. I grew up in many different cities in India, and I call New Delhi my home, which is where my parents live. And I, um, I was a stage and theater person through and through, and I thrived on that. While also focusing on my studies, my parents were not quite on board with letting the arts be my pursued vocation. So I studied finance instead, and I came to the United States in the early 90s to study finance at Columbia, and worked for a long time in banking before moving to the Bay Area, where I got the opportunity to get involved with community theater. And I worked with a lot of different theater companies in the Bay Area that brought back that joy I felt in performance. And I knew that somehow or the other, I was going to be a part of the performing arts. And I had to keep finding those avenues for me to be associated with projects that gave me opportunities to thrive creatively. For a while I was raising my children, I was working with a nonprofit called Each One Reach One that took playwriting programs to juvenile halls, working with at-risk youth. And I, as a mentor to at-risk youth, I realized that there were all these kids who were exposed to circumstances that a lot of us have no idea about. And with their limited exposure to the world and with their limited language skills, they were telling their truthful stories in their plays, which we then, as professional performers, would perform and give them that sense of satisfaction that they were becoming playwrights as well. I felt somewhere in there that, it's great to be performing characters written by others, but there were a lot of stories within me that needed to be told. And I also felt motivated by the lack of exposure and representation of women of my ilk in the United States. As an immigrant from India, I felt myself often misrepresented, if at all, on screen. And I wanted to break the stereotype. And instead of pointing fingers at others to tell our stories, it was really, the finger was pointing at me, that what have I done to tell our stories our way, to bring that level of authenticity that I was craving. And so, baby steps. I started with a short film called Past Prejudice in 2017 with a collaborator who I had worked with on before that. He made a feature film and I was an actor in that. And so we hit it off, and we said, we just have to just get out there and shoot. And 2017 was a time when the prejudice, there's no other way to say it, the prejudice against immigrants of a certain skin color representing my part of the world, that prejudice was on the rise, and there were some unfortunately awful incidents that were reported, and I felt vulnerable. And I made that film sort of to bridge the gap, get beyond that first impression that we make of people based on their skin color, or what they look like, or what they sound like, or what we think their educational status is, what we think their financial status is. All of that, beyond that, there is a natural desire to connect with a human being. And that was the element that I highlighted there, as well as what I've done with Mum, in which I consciously chose not to include any dialogue. I wanted this film to be about the language of human empathy and connection over all else. And I'm excited to share this film with all of you that is about teen mental health and suicide prevention. Of course, any journey is filled with hurdles, and so has mine been. I'm not even going to mention the pandemic because that is a hurdle that everybody has had to face, but I was gearing up to shoot my first feature film in 2020. We had some recognizable names, contracts signed and whatnot, and then March 2020 happened. So that hurdle aside, I think as an Indian American filmmaker, I do find access to resources a huge issue. Most organizations here want to support Indian filmmakers coming out of India or South Asian filmmakers coming out of South Asia, but not the immigrant community here. And I have been fortunate, based on my 2 short films, to be invited to the Toronto International Film Festival's Emerging Filmmakers Initiative. Through that, they had invited me to TIFF last September. And I got to learn a lot. And I got to learn about all the resources available to filmmakers in Canada that were supporting some great projects. I'm hoping to discover and find such support here or within South Asia, but that is a big issue, to try and create a niche and create this industry that doesn't exist about South Asian storytelling. And there is a very strong bond. We feel I've worked with some incredibly talented Pakistani American filmmakers, and I call myself very fortunate for having had the opportunity to work with them and represent their stories. We just want to tell stories. We want our voices to be heard and seen. And of course, like any filmmaker, especially so being a minority, especially, I'm not going to use gender as an excuse, but I will definitely use age as an excuse, because there is an assumption that if people want to support, they want to support young ones who are going to have a long career. And for some reason, they just assume that after a certain age, a woman really doesn't have that much more to contribute. And I'm actually quite heartened to see age inclusion in media becoming a platform to support indie filmmakers such as myself, and I'm committed to representing our voice, both culturally and definitely from the perspective of a mature filmmaker trying to bring her own unique perspective into the filmmaking world. I'm excited about a lot of projects that I am working on, including 3 feature films that I wrote, and fortunately they did very well in screenwriting competitions, and a pilot that placed at Austin Film Festival screenwriting competition. So lots on the plate, and I am really excited and grateful to be sharing my film Mum with all of you. Hope you like it. Thank you for listening.